Hey guys, tonight we're diving headfirst into the gloriously gross world of ancient Roman dental hygiene, or rather, the lack thereof. You're picturing gleaming white smiles, right? Think again. You're about to embark on a journey so bizarre, you probably won't survive this without a hefty dose of secondhand embarrassment. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge along a bustling Roman street, the air thick with the smells of roasting meats, unwashed bodies, and something else. Something faintly urinous. The sun beats down on the cobblestones, warming the dust clinging to your sandals. Around you, life unfolds in a vibrant chaos. Merchants hawk their wares, children chase stray dogs, and senators in their togas stride purposefully through the crowds. You're acutely aware of the grime clinging to your own tunic, the grit between your teeth, a reality far removed from our modern obsession with pearly whites. Imagine, for a moment, a world without toothpaste, without floss, without even a basic understanding of oral hygiene as we know it. This was the everyday reality for most ancient Romans. Their daily routine involved a lot of hard physical work, simple meals often including copious amounts of grain, and very little in the way of what we'd consider preventative dental care. This wasn't a matter of laziness. It was simply a reflection of the limited knowledge and resources available at the time. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of tooth decay among Romans was due to diet alone, or if other factors like water quality played a significant role. You stop to observe a street performer juggling flaming torches, the flickering light briefly illuminating a nearby public latrine, a grim, overflowing structure that speaks volumes about the Roman attitude towards sanitation. It's a far cry from your modern bathroom, isn't it? And yet, believe it or not, this unsavory location holds a crucial piece of the puzzle in our bizarre dental history. See, those overflowing latrines weren't just about waste disposal. They were also a surprisingly valuable resource, the source of a surprisingly popular teeth whitening treatment. Did I mention it involved urine? Because it did. Yes, you read that right. Ancient Romans believed that fresh urine possessed magical whitening properties. It wasn't just any old urine, mind you. Apparently, the urine of certain animals was considered even more potent. I know, you're trying to picture this, and you're probably failing. Don't worry, I'm struggling too. You're still nestled under your covers, the scent of lavender from your pillow drifting into your nostrils, a gentle hum of the fan, a soothing counterpoint to the quiet rhythm of your heartbeat. You're already drifting, aren't you? Good. Let's keep going. We left off with the unsettling image of Roman teeth, or rather, the lack of gleaming white smiles that you'd expect from a civilization that considered itself the peak of refinement. But remember, this isn't your average history lesson. This is a bedtime history lesson, the kind that will send you gently into slumber while simultaneously blowing your mind. You probably won't survive this, but you'll probably sleep soundly. Let's talk about urine. Yes, urine. Specifically, Roman urine. Ancient Rome, a city famed for its aqueducts, gladiatorial games, and surprisingly advanced sanitation systems, for their time, at least, also had a rather unorthodox approach to personal hygiene. We're talking about urine, that golden elixir of human metabolism, and its astonishingly widespread use in everyday Roman life. You might be picturing public fountains overflowing with, well, you get the picture. While that image is, thankfully, mostly a product of overactive imaginations, the Romans did utilize urine in ways that are, let's just say, far removed from the polite norms of modern society. Forget mouthwash. Imagine a whole industry built around the collection and processing of human waste for a variety of purposes. This wasn't some back-alley operation either. It was a significant aspect of the Roman economy, regulated and taxed, just like anything else of value. Think of it as the ultimate, albeit slightly smelly, recycling program. Beyond its use as a fertilizer, you can probably guess where I'm going with this. Roman urine held a crucial role in the booming textile industry. Fullers, those unsung heroes of Roman fashion, used it to bleach and brighten wool and linen. The ammonia contained within the urine acted as a powerful natural bleaching agent, giving clothes that pristine white that was so highly sought after. Historians still argue whether this practice was widespread throughout the empire or mainly concentrated in urban centers with larger populations. The sheer volume of urine required suggests a vast and surprisingly well-organized collection network, potentially involving designated public urinals and specialized transport, all for the sake of clean clothes. And speaking of clean, we're going to delve into the less pleasant, or more accurately, less pleasant-smelling aspects of Roman urine. Now, imagine this: the bustling streets of Rome, the air thick with the aroma of spices, roasted meats, and something else. Something subtly pungent, something almost indescribably ammonia-tinged. That would be the subtle undercurrent of urine, constantly present in a city where this curious liquid was a highly sought-after commodity. Beyond fabrics, Roman urine even found its way into medicine. Some ancient texts mention its use as a diuretic or a wound cleanser. While the effectiveness of these applications is open to debate, and frankly, let's not even get into the hygiene implications. It's a fascinating glimpse into a very different world, one where the lines between what we consider waste and valuable resource were far more blurred. And you, dear listener, are getting closer to understanding it. One quirky detail that always sticks out is the Roman Empire's unexpectedly efficient urine collection system. It was, dare I say it, quite sophisticated. We're talking about designated collectors, specific infrastructure, and even legal regulations around the whole process. It wasn't just some haphazard affair. Think about the logistical challenge. You need a massive workforce to collect, transport, and process all that urine. But the demand for the ammonia-rich fluid was so high, for textiles, for cleaning, and even for medicine, that it spurred the creation of a remarkably organized system. This reveals a fascinating aspect of ancient Roman society: its surprising capacity for organization and efficient resource management, even when dealing with something as unconventional as human waste. Now, don't let your mind wander too far. It's almost time for us to discuss the link between Roman urine and those pearly white teeth. You're settling deeper into your pillows now, the gentle hum of the fan a soothing counterpoint to the murmur of my voice. We left off with the Romans' surprisingly enthusiastic use of urine in various aspects of daily life. But let's delve a little deeper, shall we? Into the very chemistry of the stuff. Because, believe it or not, understanding the composition of Roman urine is key to understanding why they thought it was so darn useful. You probably won't survive this level of detail, but hey, we're already this far in, right? So what exactly was in that amber liquid that fueled so much of Roman society? Well, it's mostly water, of course. About 95% of it, in fact. That might not sound too exciting, but the remaining 5% is where things get interesting. We're talking urea, uric acid, creatinine, ammonia, a veritable cocktail of organic compounds. Now, you might be wrinkling your nose, but to the Romans, some of these components held real value. Urea, for example, is a nitrogen-containing compound. In modern times, it's used in fertilizers. But back then, the Romans were less concerned with growing giant pumpkins and more concerned with, well, whitening teeth. The process wasn't exactly scientific, mind you. It involved the belief that urea and other components found in urine had bleaching properties. It's worth noting that historians still argue whether the effectiveness of this practice was largely due to placebo effect or if there was any actual chemical bleaching action involved. We're not talking Colgate here. It was probably more of a hope for the best, brace yourself for the worst kind of situation. Imagine the smell, though. Oof. I bet even the gladiators winced at that one. Let's talk about uric acid. This compound, a byproduct of purine metabolism, can form crystals in the urine, leading to kidney stones, a decidedly unpleasant prospect. However, in the right, wrong concentration, the Romans may have believed it contributed to the cleaning process. The fact that they didn't have access to modern sanitation and water treatment systems added another layer of complexity to their concoction. Now, I'm not saying the average Roman's urine was pure uric acid-based bleach, but they might have believed it to be a key ingredient. They certainly didn't have the sophisticated laboratory techniques of the 21st century to isolate and analyze the various components effectively. This whole thing is a bit like a historical chemistry experiment gone hilariously wrong, isn't it? And then there's ammonia, a pungent gas that gives urine its characteristic odor. Now, you've probably smelled ammonia before. That sharp, stinging smell in cleaning products? Yeah, that's it. In small concentrations, ammonia can actually have some mild disinfecting properties. This is where the full circle element of their beliefs gets interesting. If the urine was truly believed to have a disinfection quality, they may have connected that to whitening. The Romans, despite lacking our understanding of microbiology, possibly intuited an association between cleanliness and a sort of brightness, a far cry from our modern understanding of oral hygiene. The irony, of course, is that the unsanitary conditions themselves would have probably introduced countless more germs to their mouths. Talk about unintended consequences. This is where things get truly fascinating, or perhaps just incredibly gross, depending on your perspective. Remember that the Romans had no refrigeration. Urine, left to sit, would ferment and become even more aromatic. This fermentation process could have concentrated the urea and other compounds. It could also have created all sorts of other, less pleasant substances. So, the whitening process could have been as much about the concentrated byproduct of fermentation as anything else. I'm sure that added a whole new dimension of olfactory assault. It would have been a truly unique experience for the patients who dared to try this treatment. Historians still argue whether these fermented byproducts had any significant impact on the whitening effect, or if it just made things significantly more pungent. Either way, it certainly wasn't a pleasant trip to the dentist, that's for sure. You're settling deeper into your pillows now, the soft darkness almost a tangible thing, and you're picturing those ancient Roman streets, aren't you? The clamor, the smells, the sheer chaotic energy of a civilization at its peak. But let's dial back the grandeur for a moment and peek into something less glamorous. Something concerning the state of ancient Roman dental hygiene, or rather, the shocking lack thereof. You're probably thinking, oh, they probably just didn't brush their teeth. And while that's partly true, the reality was far stranger and far more pungent. Early Roman dentistry, if you can even call it that, was a fascinating blend of common sense, utter superstition, and a reliance on substances that would make even the most seasoned modern dentist shudder. Forget the gleaming tools and the gentle humming of the drill. We're talking about a world where your average Roman's oral health was left largely to chance, a bit of luck, and an alarming amount of, well, you'll see. Remember those charming public fountains you were visualizing just now? Let's just say they weren't all used for quenching thirst. This is where the story takes a decidedly aromatic turn. Imagine you're a wealthy Roman, perhaps a senator, or maybe just a well-to-do merchant. Your teeth are aching, a throbbing misery that disrupts even the most opulent of banquets. Your options? Well, first, there was the ever-popular tooth worm. Yes, you read that right. The Romans, like many ancient cultures, believed that toothaches were caused by tiny worms burrowing into your teeth. The cure? A mix of herbs, magic spells, and hopefully, a good dose of luck. But let's be real, even in the most advanced civilizations, a toothache was a pretty serious affair. Losing a tooth often meant losing the ability to properly chew, leading to nutritional deficiencies and all sorts of related health problems. It wasn't merely a matter of aesthetics, it was survival. Think about it. The diet of a typical Roman involved a lot of hard foods, grains, nuts, and often very tough cuts of meat. This constant wear and tear on teeth meant that dental problems were rampant. Yet, professional dentists, as we understand them, were practically non-existent. The treatments available were often crude and ineffective, sometimes downright painful. Simple extractions were common, typically performed with little to no anesthetic. Imagine the screaming matches around the Roman Forum. I'm picturing the sheer horror on the faces of those poor, suffering citizens. You'd probably be screaming yourself. Historians still argue whether the use of certain herbs and remedies was purely for symptomatic relief, or if the Romans possessed any understanding of basic dental hygiene principles. For example, some texts mention rinsing the mouth with various herbal infusions, but whether these were truly preventative or simply for post-extraction pain relief remains debated. It's a fascinating area of study, highlighting the limitations of medical knowledge in the ancient world and the ingenuity, however misguided, of the people trying to solve their dental woes. You might picture a Roman dentist, if you could even call them that, as a slightly grimy fellow, hunched over a patient with a set of rusty pliers, his tools looking more appropriate for a blacksmith than a dental practitioner. Not exactly the kind of bedside manner that would soothe any anxieties, is it? And let's not even talk about sanitation practices or the complete lack thereof. You're drifting off to sleep now, imagining the sounds of the Roman marketplace, the distant cries of vendors, and well, let's just say the less said about the smells, the better. Let's move on to a slightly less pungent aspect of Roman oral hygiene, shall we? It involves urine. Don't worry, I promise to make it as painless as possible. You're drifting now, aren't you? The gentle hum of the fan is lulling you. The darkness is embracing you, and you're still thinking about Roman teeth whitening. Using, well, you know. Let's continue this wonderfully weird journey. Remember those perfectly preserved mosaics? Those weren't just for show. They were often cleaned with urine. Yes, you read that right. Urine. The very same liquid that, let's be honest, probably featured prominently in your Roman teeth whitening regimen. At least, hypothetically speaking, and definitely not literally. Imagine you're a Roman matron, bustling around your domus, overseeing the slaves, and worrying about the latest gossip. The mosaics depicting scenes of Bacchus's revelry, gloriously colorful, but dusted with the grime of everyday Roman life. Cleaning them wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about hygiene in a world before readily available, effective cleaning solutions. You wouldn't believe the sheer volume of urine available in a bustling Roman city. Public latrines were common, and that waste, my friend, wasn't just discarded. Think of it as a highly centralized, albeit pungent, recycling system. Historians still argue whether the effectiveness of urine as a cleaning agent was purely due to its ammonia content, or if other factors played a role. Some speculate that the specific diet of the Roman population, heavy on grains, legumes, and possibly less than hygienically processed meats, contributed to the unique composition of their urine. Maybe their urine was particularly potent? I'm just speculating, but it adds to the intrigue, right? And don't forget, this wasn't just for cleaning mosaics. Urine found its way into laundry. That's right, Roman laundry, bleached and softened by the golden elixir of, well, you know. Imagine the conversation. Darling, the chitin is positively sparkling. Do you think it's the new Fuller's Earth or the particularly strong batch of, aqua purificants? Now, picture this. You're a Roman soldier, marching back to camp after a long, dusty day. Your armor, gleaming, or, at least, aiming to gleam, is caked in mud. No fancy detergents for you. A quick rub down with urine, or a bucketful if you're feeling ambitious. And boom, your armor is cleaner than it would be with most cleaning products even today. It's probably why they had such a strong, unique scent. Maybe they thought a bit of ammonia would be useful on the battlefield, a way to disguise the less desirable odors of sweat, blood, and, well, everything else. This whole idea of urine as a cleaning agent is fascinating. But the funny thing is, that's only half the story. You know they used it for their teeth whitening, but they also used it for other, less sanitary processes, too. Speaking of less than sanitary, remember that whole issue of widespread lead poisoning amongst the upper echelons of Roman society? Well, that could be another factor in the popularity of urine. The lead pipes used in their water systems likely contaminated the water supply. And what better way to clean that water than with a splash of conveniently accessible urine? Okay, bad joke, but maybe not that much of a joke. It's probably not the image of healthy, happy Romans you usually imagine, is it? It certainly adds another layer to the overall charming picture of Roman hygiene. Let's not forget the less than pleasant aroma clinging to the toga of the average Roman citizen, constantly battling the pungent odors of their daily lives. You'd be surprised at how much of a role that very thing had in the culture. And I mean that in the sense that it affected their ideas about cleanliness and hygiene. You're still here, huh? Good. Because now we get to the nitty-gritty, the actual, honest-to-goodness process of Roman urine-based teeth whitening. Remember all that talk about urine being a valuable commodity? Well, its value wasn't just limited to agricultural fertilizer. No, my friend. We're talking about something far more personal. Something you probably wouldn't try today, even if someone offered you 1,000,000 sesterces, that's Roman currency, in case you're keeping track. You'd probably need a few million to even consider it. Imagine this. You're a Roman citizen, perhaps a slightly less than affluent one, since only the wealthy truly had access to the premium urine. More on that later. You wake up, the sun is just cresting the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, and the smell of, well, let's just say the air has a certain robustness. That's the city of Rome in all its glory. Your day begins not with coffee, but with a slightly less appealing and definitely less aromatic ritual. The process, from what we can gather from various historical accounts and archaeological findings, which, let's face it, don't always smell particularly pleasant, involve collecting fresh urine. Not just any urine, mind you. This wasn't some random public toilet collection. The best urine came from young, healthy boys. Historians still argue whether this was based on some believed purity of younger urine or simply a matter of convenience and access. Either way, it certainly adds another layer to our understanding of Roman hygiene practices or lack thereof. The urine wasn't used directly, of course. Think of it like a pre-industrial, extremely pungent alchemy experiment. The urine underwent a process of fermentation, allowing time for certain compounds to break down and concentrate. Think of it as a kind of natural aging process, though I doubt anyone would ever describe the aroma as aged and refined, not even with the best oak barrels and some added spices. The result was a yellowish, cloudy liquid, a far cry from your modern whitening strips. Now, here's a quirky fact for you. The type of container the urine was stored in might have played a role in the final product's effectiveness. Some believe that certain types of pottery could have leached minerals into the urine, enhancing its whitening properties. It's a fascinating, if somewhat dubious, area of historical investigation, isn't it? It certainly makes you appreciate the convenience of modern-day toothpaste. This fermented urine was then applied to the teeth, typically with a cloth or perhaps a rudimentary toothbrush made of twigs or bone. It wasn't a quick, 5-minute procedure. You're probably looking at a process that spanned multiple uses or possibly even days. We know they didn't just swish and spit. The application was probably more involved than that, potentially involving gentle scrubbing, which sounds less than appealing. Imagine the look on your dentist's face if you tried to explain this method to them today. The effectiveness of this method is, of course, debatable. While some believe the ammonia in the urine might have had some mild bleaching effect, it also likely had a damaging impact on tooth enamel, leading to potential sensitivity or even damage over time. It is perhaps a prime example of the Romans' impressive ingenuity in the face of limited resources, balanced against their perhaps less than ideal understanding of oral hygiene. You might be thinking, well, that's just disgusting. And yes, by modern standards, it is, which is why you probably won't survive this description without at least a mild feeling of nausea. But it's also a glimpse into a very different world, a world where resourcefulness and practicality often outweighed our modern sensibilities concerning hygiene. It was, in a way, a testament to the Romans' practical approach to life. This is not to say that it was a good approach or a healthy approach, but it definitely shows the resourcefulness of a people faced with far fewer options than we have now. And that, my friend, is how the ancient Romans, in their boundless ingenuity, used urine to whiten their teeth. The sheer audacity of the process is simply astounding, and yet, another reason for you to appreciate your electric toothbrush and fluoride toothpaste. You're still here, huh? Good. Because the journey into the surprisingly pungent world of Roman dental hygiene continues. We've established the why. That gleaming smile was a status symbol, a sign of wealth and leisure. But how, exactly, did they get their hands, or rather, their teeth, on all that urine? Let's delve into the surprisingly complex logistics of Roman urine collection. You might be picturing overflowing chamber pots and frantic servants. And while that certainly played a part, the reality is far more organized. Or at least, more organized than you might initially suspect, given the rather unusual commodity involved. Imagine a bustling Roman city, the air thick with the scent of roasted meats, incense, and, well, something else. Something distinctly urinous. Public urinals, often elaborately carved stone structures, were commonplace, not hidden away like modern conveniences. These weren't just places to relieve oneself. They were social hubs, places where gossip was exchanged and deals were struck. Think of them as the ancient Roman equivalent of a busy coffee shop, only instead of lattes, the primary product was human waste. And not just any human waste, urine specifically. Because in a society where even the most basic sanitation was often lacking, the collection of urine was a surprisingly well-established business. Public urinals were often strategically placed near fullers' workshops, those places where textiles were cleaned and bleached. This proximity wasn't accidental. The fullers were the primary consumers of urine, a key ingredient in their trade. This wasn't just some unsanitary shortcut, either. Urine contains ammonia, a powerful cleaning agent that, when properly treated, was crucial for whitening cloth. A symbiotic relationship flourished, with the city's waste streams literally fueling a vital industry. Now, the collection process itself wasn't exactly a glamorous affair. You probably won't survive this part of the story if you have a delicate stomach. Imagine vats and containers, sometimes large enough to hold hundreds of gallons, strategically placed beneath the urinals. These would be regularly emptied by urine collectors, often men of humble means, who would then transport their pungent cargo to the fullers. The work was arduous, likely smelly, and certainly not a job for the faint of heart. Historians still argue whether these collectors were state-employed, privately contracted, or worked somewhere in between. The records are patchy, at best. The social status of these individuals remains a topic of debate amongst experts. But the urine wasn't just destined for the fullers. Remember that gleaming smile? A smaller, but equally important, portion of this collected liquid found its way into the hands, or rather, mouths, of Roman dentists, or whoever performed the equivalent functions in that era. These men, and they were almost certainly men, would use urine, sometimes diluted, sometimes combined with other abrasive substances, as a tooth whitening agent. The ammonia, again, would play a role, gently breaking down staining compounds and, presumably, leaving behind a pearly white surface. Though, based on the available evidence, that pearly white might be a very generous interpretation. The actual process of using urine to whiten teeth is a mystery cloaked in even more ambiguity than the urine collection itself. The lack of detailed written instructions makes us largely reliant on inferences and speculation. One can only imagine the somewhat less than pleasant experience, possibly involving rinsing, possibly involving swabbing. The details, unfortunately, are lost to time. Furthermore, it's a bit of a macabre joke to imagine a Roman trying to discreetly explain to his dentist that he'd rather not have his teeth bleached with urine because of, the lingering scent and the potential for infection. Oh, and did I mention that the urine used wasn't always the freshest? This might have significantly varied the efficacy and safety of the procedure. Imagine the scenes: the bustling marketplace, the scent of urine mingling with spices and perfumes, the fuller's workshops a symphony of splashing and rinsing, the less savory sounds emanating from the less savory aspects of the whole process. It's a pungent picture, to be sure, offering a glimpse into a world where practicality sometimes trumped, well, everything else. And speaking of practicality, let's see if we can find out what else we might discover about these fascinating procedures as we move into the next segment. You're walking through the bustling streets of ancient Rome, the air thick with the scent of spices, sweat, and something else. A faint, almost ammonia-like tang hangs in the air, a subtle reminder of a practice you'd probably find utterly revolting today: the use of urine for whitening teeth. Remember those gleaming, pearly whites you were just imagining? Well, let's temper that image a little. Let's be honest, the idea of swishing urine in your mouth is less Hollywood smile and more medieval medicine gone wrong. But it was a thing. A very real, very Roman thing. And while you probably wouldn't survive a week on the Roman dental hygiene plan, we're here to explore just how this bizarre practice unfolded. Now, you might be picturing some back-alley barber-surgeon concoction, maybe a grimy apothecary flinging urine at you. But, surprisingly, this wasn't some clandestine operation. The use of urine in dentistry was, in its own peculiar way, somewhat common. Think of it as the ancient Roman equivalent of that charcoal teeth whitening treatment you saw on TikTok, only far less glamorous and significantly more pungent. Historians still argue whether the effectiveness stemmed from the ammonia content breaking down stains, or if it was simply placebo effect, a case of if it smells this bad, it must be working. Let's be real, the psychological impact of that smell alone probably warrants its own study. The social implications of this, however, are fascinating. Was everyone using urine to whiten their teeth? Absolutely not. This wasn't some universally accessible, egalitarian beauty secret. Access to this peculiar treatment was probably highly stratified, reflecting the vast social and economic disparities of Roman society. Imagine the wealthy elite, perhaps even the emperors themselves, employing their own designated urine collectors, a surprisingly prestigious and certainly unique job description, I'd say. Picture some hapless servant, tasked with the truly unglamorous duty of collecting the urine of their masters for dental purposes. One can only speculate about the conversations, or lack thereof, during these encounters. Consider the contrast. The meticulously groomed patricians, their togas impeccably draped, enjoying a luxurious bath before indulging in this decidedly less glamorous dental ritual. Meanwhile, the common folk, struggling to afford basic necessities, would probably have had no access to this method, or even the inclination. After all, clean water for drinking and bathing was often a luxury itself. So, while the upper echelons might have been attempting to achieve a blindingly white smile using this questionable method, the majority of Roman citizens probably relied on significantly less aromatic methods, or simply accepted their natural teeth color. It was a peculiar social marker, a dental divide far removed from our modern understanding of oral hygiene. You're probably starting to wonder about the logistics of this. How exactly did this process work? Did they simply swish and spit? Was it a carefully measured dose? Were there any official instructions or manuals available? Well, unfortunately, details are scarce. We know urine was used, but the precise techniques, the concentrations used, and any potential side effects remain largely shrouded in the mists of time. One can only imagine the conversations within Roman households. Darling, has the urine collector been round today? I need to whiten my teeth before the Senate meeting. It's oddly compelling, isn't it? And then there's the question of what kind of urine was considered most effective. Was it a matter of diet, or maybe a particular time of day? Did certain animals' urine possess superior whitening properties? Probably not, but one can dream. These are details that history has, quite unfortunately, failed to preserve. But, hey, it's not every day you get to contemplate the nuances of ancient Roman urine-based dentistry. The very thought is surprisingly entertaining, no? This whole practice raises another amusing question. What about the scent? Imagine you are at a Roman banquet, surrounded by patricians and senators, all flashing their urine-whitened smiles. You can almost feel the potent whiff of ammonia battling the expensive perfumes and the aromas of the feast. The Romans might have had their emperors, their gladiators, and their advanced engineering, but their dental care was decidedly unique. It's another tiny window into a world so different from our own, full of peculiar practices and bizarre choices that we, thankfully, no longer engage with. I mean, we have fluoride toothpaste. They had? Well, you get the picture. Let's also not forget the potential for infection. Imagine the unsanitary conditions, the lack of sterilization. It wasn't exactly an ideal situation for oral hygiene, to put it mildly. One shudders to think of the potential consequences of such a practice. The sheer audacity of it all is almost comical, isn't it? Now, as you drift off to sleep tonight, imagine the strange, unsettling, and yet slightly hilarious world of Roman urine-based teeth whitening. Think of the social inequalities, the unique jobs, and the overwhelmingly pungent aroma. You can almost smell it, can't you? And perhaps, just perhaps, that's enough to send you gently into a deep, restorative slumber. You're still here, huh? Good, because we're about to delve into the truly potent heart of Roman dental hygiene. Remember all that urine? All those overflowing public latrines? Well, those weren't just sources of pleasant aromas. No, my friend, they were the very foundation of a surprisingly popular and utterly revolting teeth whitening method. You're probably picturing some sophisticated, spa-like setting. Think again. Imagine the stench, the chaos, the sheer audacity of it all. It's almost enough to make you wish you'd stayed in bed. Almost. We've already established that human urine, surprisingly, contains ammonia. Ammonia is a known bleaching agent, right? We're not talking about some delicate, modern bleaching process, though. This is Roman-era DIY, where safety measures are flexible. Think more along the lines of hope for the best, prepare for the worst, than carefully calibrated concentration. Historians still argue whether the concentration of ammonia in urine was consistently high enough to achieve noticeable whitening effects, especially given the variations in diet and hydration among the Roman populace. Perhaps they simply used it because it was readily available, and, well, what other options did they have? Let's not forget that dentistry in that era was, let's say, developing. Now, the effectiveness of this method? It's complicated. Let's be realistic. The idea of swishing urine around your mouth is hardly appealing, even if we remove the image of a bustling Roman latrine from the equation. Modern dental practices would absolutely shudder at the thought. The supposed benefits, according to historical accounts, were primarily cosmetic. A wider smile, a more presentable appearance. Perhaps that made it worth the experience. And, let's be frank, a slightly wider smile probably felt like a huge win when dealing with the realities of Roman life, where diseases ran rampant, and even finding clean water was a challenge. However, we must consider the significant drawbacks. Urine isn't exactly sterile. It's loaded with bacteria, and we're not just talking about the bacteria that were naturally present in the body. Think about the overall hygiene conditions of the time. You're introducing a whole plethora of potentially harmful microorganisms into your mouth. Infections, gum disease, possibly even damage to tooth enamel. The list of potential risks is long and, frankly, quite terrifying. It was, in essence, a high-risk, low-reward proposition. It was a gamble your teeth might not survive. You probably won't survive this sentence without shivering a little. Think about it. You're swishing potentially contaminated liquid around your mouth, hoping for brighter teeth, while simultaneously risking a wide range of dental and oral infections. It's the ultimate example of a beauty treatment that pushed the boundaries of what we would consider acceptable today. On a brighter note, or perhaps a wider note, some historical accounts suggest that specific types of urine were preferred. Apparently, the urine of herbivores was considered purer and therefore less harmful. So, maybe the Romans were slightly more discerning than we give them credit for. Or maybe they were just desperately grasping at straws. I mean, who knows what else was going on in those latrines? The overall effectiveness also depends on various factors: how often it was used, the individual's overall health, and the concentration of ammonia in the urine, of course. We can safely say that while it might have provided some degree of whitening, it was likely a far cry from the results you'd get from your modern-day dentist. Plus, the long-term health consequences almost certainly outweighed any short-term aesthetic gains. So, while the Romans might have had wider smiles, it came at a cost. A rather smelly and potentially dangerous cost. But hey, at least they were innovative, right? Right? Let's move on to something less pungent. You're still drifting, aren't you? Good. That's the point. We're on a journey through time, specifically to the surprisingly pungent dental hygiene practices of ancient Rome. Remember all that urine? Well, it wasn't the only thing they used to brighten their smiles. Let's explore some of the alternative methods they employed, methods that might make you question your own modern oral hygiene routine. I mean, have you ever considered the possibility that your toothpaste contains microscopic dinosaur bones? Just kidding, probably. But seriously, imagine the sheer effort these folks went to, all without the benefit of modern technology. That's dedication, or maybe just desperation. Besides the urine-based concoctions, ancient Romans also utilized a variety of abrasive substances to clean and whiten their teeth. Pumice, a volcanic rock, was a popular choice. Think of it as nature's very own, extremely rough toothbrush. You can imagine the feeling, a gritty, volcanic scrub on your pearly whites. Historians still argue whether the Romans understood the long-term damage that such abrasive cleaning could cause to tooth enamel. We're talking about wearing down your teeth gradually over time, like slowly chipping away at a particularly stubborn piece of granite. Not ideal. Another common ingredient was charcoal. Yes, the same stuff you use to grill your burgers. Picture this. You're a Roman citizen, possibly a senator enjoying a rather opulent feast, and after you've finished your roasted boar and some suspiciously colored wine, you reach for your charcoal-based toothpaste. Think of the black residue smeared on your fingers. It's quite a visual. But hey, at least it probably left your teeth impressively sparkling, at least temporarily. The charcoal acted as a mild abrasive, although its effectiveness as a whitener is debatable. It's a bit like trying to clean your shoes with a slightly burnt marshmallow. It might work for a small area, but it's not exactly ideal for a complete makeover. And then there's the matter of herbs and spices. Many Roman texts mention the use of various herbs and spices mixed with other ingredients to create toothpastes and mouthwashes. We're talking about a blend of natural remedies and what possibly felt and smelled a lot like a very potent culinary experiment. The exact recipes remain somewhat mysterious, lost to the sands of time, and perhaps a good thing. Some scholars believe that certain herbs possessed antiseptic properties, and that's a good thing, keeping away some rather unpleasant dental conditions. Others argue that the herbs were mainly for masking the smell of, well, let's just say that other ingredients were less pleasant. This variety of approaches highlights something fascinating about ancient Roman dental care. It was a surprisingly diverse field, reflecting the eclectic nature of Roman society itself. From the most readily available substances, like urine, to more exotic ingredients, like imported spices, the pursuit of a gleaming smile spanned economic classes and geographic areas. Consider how much time and energy must have gone into procuring and preparing these different whitening agents. It shows that a healthy and attractive smile was considered a valuable asset, worth the effort. But let's not forget the potential downsides. Using abrasive materials, even with the best of intentions, carried the risk of damaging teeth, a risk that probably wasn't fully understood back then. You can also imagine the level of discomfort associated with each cleaning session, and the potential for introducing bacterial infections, especially with ingredients of dubious hygiene standards, should not be overlooked. In a world without modern dentistry, the consequences of poor oral hygiene could have been quite severe. It's another good reason to appreciate the advancements in dental care that we enjoy today. Did you know that some researchers believe the Romans used certain types of vinegar in their dental treatments? Imagine that potent smell and taste. I definitely can't. Think about the social aspects of this, too. A bright smile would have been a highly desirable feature, and it could have influenced social interactions and personal relationships. Imagine the status associated with achieving a radiant smile, even if that smile came at a cost, however unpleasant. This reminds us that the human desire for a beautiful smile extends across centuries and cultures. It's a timeless pursuit that connects us to the ancient Romans in a way that's both surprising and oddly comforting. You might be asleep now, but you're also subconsciously judging the Romans' oral hygiene choices. Isn't history wonderful? It makes you appreciate your electric toothbrush in a whole new light. You wander the bustling streets of ancient Rome, the midday sun beating down on the cobblestones. The air, thick with the scent of roasting meats and wood smoke, carries a less pleasant undercurrent, a sharp, ammoniacal tang that you might initially mistake for a particularly pungent cheese stall. But no, this is the faint, ever-present aroma of urine. You wrinkle your nose, perhaps a little subconsciously, given your modern sensibilities, yet the Romans themselves, you realize, likely barely registered it. To them, it was just there, a part of everyday life, like the dust or the ever-present noise of the city. And not just there in the sense of an unpleasant side effect. It was there in the sense of a valuable resource, a commodity even. Remember those gleaming white teeth you're so diligently brushing each morning? Well, forget the fancy whitening strips you use. For the Romans, a potent, readily available whitening agent came not from a high-tech laboratory, but from the ubiquitous public urinals. Think about that for a moment. Your toothbrush, your toothpaste, your entire oral hygiene routine, built upon centuries of refinement and scientific breakthroughs. Now imagine swapping all that for, well, let's just say it's not exactly a pleasant mental picture. You probably wouldn't survive a day, let alone a lifetime, sticking to that ancient Roman dental care regime. Yet, for them, it was completely normal. Historians still argue whether the effectiveness of urine as a teeth whitener was purely a placebo effect, a byproduct of the abrasive nature of the uric acid crystals, or a combination of both. The reality is that the scientific understanding of oral hygiene wasn't even close to where it is today, and even the most basic antiseptic practices were remarkably absent from daily routines. The sheer volume of urine produced by a city of this size, however, speaks to just how prevalent this practice actually was. Let's not sugarcoat it. Public perception of urine in ancient Rome wasn't exactly refined. It wasn't viewed with the squeamishness we might feel today. It wasn't considered disgusting or taboo in the same way we would think of other bodily fluids. It was a functional substance, a byproduct of life, much like sweat or saliva. Think of it like a pre-industrial, low-tech version of our reliance on, say, crude oil. Oil is a messy, sometimes smelly byproduct of nature, yet it's also fundamentally important for our modern economy and society. Urine, for the Romans, played a similar, albeit much smaller, role within their systems of commerce and domestic life. It wasn't just about teeth whitening, either. The uses extended far beyond the realm of personal hygiene. Urine was a valuable commodity in the production of textiles, in the tanning process of leather, and even, perhaps surprisingly, in laundry. Imagine, you're doing your laundry, and you're not reaching for modern detergent, but rather for a bucket of freshly collected urine. This was not a mere anecdote. It was a regular household practice. The ammonia in urine acted as a natural cleaning agent, and while the smell may not have been pleasant, it was certainly effective. You might think this is rather unusual, but consider the fact that for centuries, people used a variety of substances for cleaning, things we might find unsettling today, but that made perfect sense within the context of their available resources and knowledge. The Roman Empire was vast and complex, so it's important to remember that the public perception of urine, just like other aspects of Roman life, likely varied depending on social class and geographical location. You would have found different attitudes within different parts of the vast empire, from the crowded streets of Rome itself to the more rural and isolated communities in the provinces. This wasn't a unified, monolithic opinion. It was a mosaic of beliefs and practices shaped by social dynamics, local custom, and individual circumstances. Yet, the overall trend is undeniable. Urine was simply a far more accepted and utilized resource than it is in our society today. Perhaps one of the most surprising quirks about it all is how widely acceptable the use of urine was. It's difficult for us to fully comprehend how the Romans approached this, without the framework of modern sanitation and hygiene understanding. But what it really shows is just how ingenious and resourceful people can be when confronted with the limitations of their environment. You're drifting now, aren't you? The gentle hum of the fan, the soft darkness, and the lingering scent of, well, let's not dwell on that. We're deep in the Roman Empire, remember? You're strolling through the bustling forum, the air thick with the smells of roasted meats, unwashed bodies, and yes, surprisingly, the faint, almost ammoniacal tang of urine. It's not quite the spa day you'd envisioned, is it? But hey, a bit of olfactory discomfort is a small price to pay for a dazzlingly white smile, right? Or so the ancient Romans believed. We've been exploring their rather unique approach to dental hygiene, a method so bizarre it's practically a historical punchline. You probably won't survive this level of historical weirdness, but we'll make it through together. Now, while the Romans were masters of many things, engineering, law, warfare, their dental practices, let's just say, left much to be desired by modern standards. Their understanding of oral hygiene was, shall we politely say, rudimentary. We know that they used toothpicks, often made of sharpened bone, to dislodge food particles. This, combined with their diet, often rich in sugary fruits and honey, probably contributed to a fair share of dental woes. But that's the thing about history. It's often messy, unexpected, and occasionally downright stinky. This is what makes it so fascinating, though. And this brings us to the fascinating, if slightly pungent, subject of urine as a teeth-whitening agent. Remember how we talked about the abundance of public urinals in Roman cities? Well, those weren't just convenient amenities. They were also a source of a rather unusual commodity. The urine, believe it or not, was collected and used for a surprising variety of purposes, from tanning leather to cleaning clothes. One of its more curious applications, though, involved the creation of natural bleach. Historians still argue whether the urine was used directly on the teeth or if it was first processed to extract its whitening properties. Some suggest that urine was boiled down to create a concentrated solution of ammonia, a potent bleaching agent, even if a rather unpleasant one to handle. Others propose that it was used in a more diluted form, perhaps as a mouthwash. Regardless of the exact method, the basic principle remained the same. Harness the bleaching power of human waste to achieve a brighter smile. It's definitely not something you'd see advertised in a modern toothpaste commercial, But then again, modern toothpaste commercials don't involve gladiatorial combat either, do they? The effectiveness of this rather unconventional technique is, of course, a subject of much debate. While ammonia does have bleaching properties, it's also incredibly harsh and could easily damage tooth enamel. We can only imagine the potential side effects: sensitive teeth, gum irritation, perhaps even long-term damage. Think about it. You're scrubbing your pearly whites with concentrated pee. Sounds romantic, doesn't it? Oh, the sacrifices made in the name of beauty. It's also a great illustration of how even seemingly strange practices can reveal a lot about the beliefs and resources of a particular society. Did the Romans truly believe this to be the best method, or were they simply lacking better options? But let's not limit our exploration of urine-based beauty practices to just the Romans. Let's take a quick, slightly smelly detour to explore similar practices in other cultures. You might be surprised at how prevalent the use of urine in various forms of personal care was throughout history. This wasn't unique to the Roman Empire. In fact, it was a widespread belief across several cultures that urine possessed certain cleansing or medicinal qualities. Imagine the conversations around the water cooler back then. In some parts of the world, urine has been traditionally used to clean wounds, believing it possessed antiseptic properties. Others used it as a hair rinse, aiming for shinier, stronger locks. The idea that urine held some mystical power isn't entirely surprising. Many ancient cultures believed in the power of bodily fluids, often associating them with life force or spiritual energy. From a modern perspective, these practices seem bizarre, even repulsive, but understanding them requires putting aside our modern biases and considering the context in which they occurred. So, while we might cringe at the thought of using urine to whiten our teeth, it offers a fascinating window into the past, reminding us that beauty standards and hygiene practices have evolved significantly over time. You're wandering through the bustling streets of Pompeii. The year is 79 AD, the air thick with the smells of roasting meats, wood smoke, and something else. Something faintly urinous? Don't worry, it's not as bad as you're imagining. At least, not all of it. Remember those surprisingly effective and surprisingly disgusting ancient Roman beauty secrets? Well, the urine-based teeth whitening is still very much a thing, a testament to their ingenuity and perhaps a slight lack of other options. You peer into a humble shop. The owner, a wizened old woman with surprisingly white teeth for her age, smiles knowingly. She's got a jar of something bubbling faintly, a pale yellowish liquid. You avert your eyes, trying not to think about the source. This isn't just any old urine. This is carefully aged, possibly even filtered urine. A whole process, you might say, a true artisanal product. This practice, as oddly specific as it sounds, wasn't some fringe activity. It was relatively common. Think of it as the Roman equivalent of those charcoal teeth whitening kits that you see all over Instagram. Only instead of sustainably sourced charcoal, they were using, well, you know. Historians still argue whether the effectiveness was purely placebo or if there was some actual chemical process involved, potentially stemming from the ammonia in the urine, which has mild bleaching properties. It's a fascinating debate, one that keeps historians up at night, almost as much as the mystery of what exactly was in that bubbling jar. Perhaps a touch of herbs? A secret ingredient passed down through generations? The possibilities are endless and utterly revolting to the modern palate. But the reign of urine whitening, like all good things and many bad ones, eventually came to an end. The decline wasn't a sudden event, but a gradual fading away, a slow sunset over a rather unpleasant horizon. Several factors contributed to its demise. Firstly, the rise of improved dental hygiene practices, while still far from what we know today, started to offer some alternative approaches. Think of it like this. You wouldn't use dial-up internet if high-speed fiber optic cables were readily available, would you? Similarly, as other, slightly less revolting options started to emerge, the appeal of urine whitening naturally waned. This is not to say that everyone immediately abandoned the practice, of course. Some traditions die hard, especially those that have a centuries-long history behind them. Secondly, the growing awareness of hygiene and sanitation, particularly in the later Roman Empire, played a significant role. As people became more cognizant of cleanliness, or at least the dangers of visibly poor sanitation, the idea of applying processed urine to your teeth no matter how artisanal, became less appealing. It's a bit like how we've moved on from using leeches for medical purposes. Progress, however slow, eventually leads to better options. Furthermore, remember that whole Roman reliance on public latrines and aqueducts? Well, the quality of the urine used in these practices would vary depending on the availability of clean water sources. In areas with less than ideal sanitation, the urine itself might have been less than pristine, leading to some pretty serious issues. Imagine the potential for bacterial infections, not to mention the sheer unpleasantness. Suddenly, the benefits of sparkling white teeth seem to pale in comparison to the potential risks. Finally, the sheer unpleasantness of the whole affair cannot be underestimated. It's one thing to read about it in a history book, it's another thing entirely to imagine actually using it. While you might find the idea mildly interesting or even comical now, I imagine the process itself was anything but pleasant, to say the least. You probably wouldn't survive this if you lived during that time and were suddenly told you needed a full course of urine-based whitening. We can laugh now, but for the average Roman, it was probably just inconvenient. And as history shows us, inconvenience, even if it guarantees a dazzling smile, is often a powerful force driving societal change. Plus, the smell alone must have been legendary. The slow, yet steady decline of urine whitening serves as a fascinating case study in the evolution of both beauty standards and sanitation practices. It reminds us that even the most bizarre historical practices often hold a valuable mirror to their time, reflecting the scientific knowledge, or lack thereof, societal norms, and even the simple availability of resources within a specific culture. We may have long abandoned this particular dental care method, but the story of Roman urine whitening continues to offer a quirky and surprisingly relevant insight into the past. Did they really think this was a good idea? Probably not. But hey, at least their teeth probably sparkled a little brighter. Or maybe they didn't. Perhaps it was all a big, stinky myth. Remember, you're still learning, and so am I. This is where the fun is really starting. You're still drifting, aren't you? Good. That's the goal. We've journeyed through centuries of surprisingly pungent dental history, from the Roman obsession with urine to the surprisingly sophisticated, for its time, understanding of oral hygiene within their society. Remember that horrifyingly effective, albeit undeniably gross, crocodile dung sunscreen? Well, this next part might be almost as strange. We're now going to bridge the gap between those ancient Roman latrines and your modern dentist chair. Prepare yourself for a dental deep dive into the surprisingly relevant past. You might even find yourself nodding off mid-sentence, which is, again, the whole point. Think about your last dental cleaning. The whirring of the drill, the slightly metallic taste of the fluoride, the soothing murmurs of your hygienist. A far cry from the pungent aroma of a Roman public latrine. Wouldn't you agree? Yet, buried beneath layers of antiseptic wipes and advanced technology, there are echoes of ancient practices. The Romans, despite their rather unconventional approach to teeth whitening, understood a fundamental truth: oral hygiene matters. While they certainly didn't possess electric toothbrushes or cavity-filling lasers, their pursuit of pearly whites, even if born out of a less-than-ideal substance, points to a surprisingly modern understanding of aesthetics and health. Historians still argue whether the Romans' belief in the whitening power of urine was purely based on anecdotal evidence, or if there was a more scientific understanding at play. Perhaps it was a combination of both. Perhaps it was purely superstitious. Regardless, the fact remains that they used it. And this highlights a fascinating parallel with modern dentistry: the constant search for better, brighter smiles. The Roman approach, obviously, was incredibly rudimentary. We now understand the complex interplay of bacteria, plaque, and enamel erosion. We know that urine, while containing some potentially beneficial components, is also laden with bacteria and other substances that can be harmful to oral health. The irony, of course, is that the very substance they used to improve their teeth could just as easily have destroyed them. It's a bit like using a chainsaw to trim your fingernails. It might work, but there's a much higher chance of serious injury. Think about the evolution of whitening treatments. From the Romans' surprisingly crude methods to the relatively sophisticated bleaching gels and laser treatments of today, we've come a long way. But the underlying principle remains the same: the desire for a whiter, brighter smile. Even the modern bleaching process, while technologically advanced, still targets the same fundamental issue, the discoloration of enamel. And here's a fun fact for you. A quirky one, I promise. Did you know that some ancient Roman recipes for urine-based toothpastes included pumice stone? Yeah, pumice. The abrasive power of that volcanic rock, combined with the potentially clarifying components of urine, created a seriously hardcore whitening concoction. You probably wouldn't survive a lifetime of that regime, to be honest. The modern dental industry is a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, a testament to our collective obsession with shiny teeth. But the obsession is nothing new. The Romans, in their own peculiar way, were pioneers in the pursuit of aesthetic dentistry. They just happened to choose a rather less than savory method. Their belief in urine's whitening power might seem ludicrous to us now, but it reminds us that the human desire for a beautiful smile has spanned millennia, transcending cultural differences and technological advancements. Even today, we're still experimenting with new and improved ways to achieve the perfect smile. The quest continues. So, keep that in mind next time you're lying in the dentist chair. You're participating in a long and often strange tradition, stretching back to the very heart of the Roman Empire. The difference, of course, is that your dentist won't be using urine, unless you go to a particularly adventurous and possibly criminally negligent practitioner, which, let's be clear, you shouldn't. It's a remarkably clear lesson in the importance of trusting your dental hygiene to the professionals, rather than questionable historical practices. We've advanced significantly in our understanding of oral health. Even the seemingly simple act of brushing your teeth is a testament to centuries of advancements in hygiene and understanding of microbiology. Remember, that's a far cry from relying on something that could be better described as a biological hazard. And now, as the gentle hum of the fan lulls you deeper into sleep, remember the surprisingly pertinent lesson from our Roman ancestors, the timeless pursuit of the perfect smile. Even if their methods were, let's just say, less than ideal. Let the gentle rhythm of my voice carry you away. You're almost there. The faint scent of lavender from your pillow, the gentle hum of the fan, and the rhythmic lull of my voice are weaving a comforting spell. We've journeyed through the surprisingly pungent world of Roman dental hygiene, a world where urine wasn't just a byproduct of daily life, but a surprisingly sought-after commodity, at least for your teeth. Remember that first whiff of ammonia as you imagined yourself in the Roman Forum? The slightly nauseous feeling as you pictured those potent concoctions? Well, we've come to the end of that particular olfactory odyssey. You've successfully navigated the murky waters of ancient Roman sanitation practices, learned about the surprisingly sophisticated, or perhaps surprisingly unsophisticated, depending on your perspective, technology of the time, and even discovered the surprising role of social status in oral hygiene. Remember those incredibly wealthy Romans, with their specially trained slaves to meticulously prepare their urine-based toothpaste? Now, those were the days. Although, I'm pretty sure even the most privileged Roman wouldn't trade his dental routine for a modern-day dentist chair, or, at the very least, for a Crest white strips. Historians still argue whether the effectiveness of urine-based tooth whitening was purely placebo or if there was a genuine, albeit limited, chemical reaction at play. Some argue that the ammonia in the urine, when properly treated, could have indeed had a slight bleaching effect. Others believe the entire practice was more about the social cachet, a marker of status and an expression of elite tastes. You can almost imagine a Roman matron proudly displaying her pearly whites, gleaming thanks to a carefully curated concoction of carefully aged urine, perhaps aged in a particularly fancy amphora, like a fine wine. It truly highlights the sometimes bizarre ways in which historical cultures approached health and beauty. Consider, too, how our understanding of hygiene has evolved. We've moved from pungent urine concoctions to the relatively sterile world of fluoride toothpaste and advanced dental procedures. Yet, the fundamental human desire for a bright, healthy smile remains. You see, the basic human need for attractive teeth has spanned millennia. Despite the vastly different approaches, the core desire hasn't changed. We all strive for that perfect smile, be it through ancient urine or modern-day orthodontics. Now, let's be honest, the entire process probably sounds rather unpleasant. And let's not forget, while urine-based whitening was indeed a thing in Roman times, Many Romans also suffered from severely damaged teeth, thanks to a diet heavy on grains and lack of access to proper dental care. Even those well-off Romans would probably be horrified by the state of their teeth by today's standards. Think about the sheer range of ingredients, from urine to herbs to pumice, each adding a peculiar layer to the narrative. It's a fascinating blend of practical necessity, social signaling, and a hefty dose of the unexpected. The whole experience of exploring this topic, I suspect, has been rather unusual for you, perhaps even a little strange and even slightly smelly, metaphorically speaking, of course. This journey into the past reminds us that history is not just about grand battles and political machinations. It's also about the everyday lives of ordinary people, their beliefs, their practices, and their surprisingly creative approaches to everyday problems. And sometimes, those everyday problems and solutions lead us to very, very unexpected discoveries. It is in these unexpected corners that we find the most intriguing details. And what could be more intriguing than a Roman's quest for a gleaming smile, no matter how unconventional the method? So, as you drift off to sleep tonight, you might find yourself contemplating the surprising ingenuity of the ancient Romans, their unusual dental hygiene routine, and the quirky details of their daily lives. Maybe you'll even dream of a slightly less pungent Roman forum. You might think back to the Romans' surprisingly practical use of urine. I bet you didn't expect that one. And that's the magic of history, uncovering the unexpected and the unusual, and maybe even finding something to laugh about along the way. So, sweet dreams. Remember, always brush your teeth, but probably steer clear of the urine. And so, we reach the end of section 15. A long journey it's been, hasn't it? We've traveled through time, across vast oceans, and into the hearts of people who lived lives so different from our own, yet so fundamentally the same. They loved, they lost, they hoped, they dreamed, just like we do. Remember the echoing laughter of children playing in ancient Rome? The quiet strength in the face of hardship shown by those early settlers? These are stories that whisper to us across the years, reminding us of our shared humanity, our enduring spirit. Perhaps you feel a little tired now, a gentle weight settling upon your eyelids. That's all right. Let the stories we've shared tonight settle gently into your mind, like soft snowflakes falling on a quiet field. Don't worry about remembering every detail. Just let the feeling of these histories linger, a warm comfort as you drift off. Think of the stars twinkling above, vast and ancient, just as the events we've discussed tonight stretch far back into the past. Each tiny light a beacon, a witness to the unfolding of time, a silent companion on our journey through history. And as you close your eyes, picture those stars dimming slowly, their light fading into the soft darkness of the night sky, a peaceful, starlit blanket encompassing you in its gentle embrace. Sleep now, little one. Sleep soundly. Tomorrow, we will explore more of history's wonders together. But for tonight, just rest. Rest and dream.